Tell me that you have money without telling me you have money.
It's like, the person has to take off a piece of clothing. Like, it took like 30 seconds. I'm like, hi, I'm Wes with Casey Care.
And I'm Ace. And we're joined by a couple of wonderful guests today. Let's start right here.
My name is David Seymour, and I am married to Joel Barrett.
Oh.
There we go. Mm-hmm.
And I'm Joel Barrett.
And he's not going to say that he's married to me, okay?
It's been sad.
I started to say a different name just for people. I am an LGBTQ writer, speaker, and gatherer with Joel Speaks Out. And I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit more about what that means.
So, how long have you guys been together?
15 years.
Oh, like my whole life.
Oh my god.
I turned 16 this year, so.
Just kidding.
And so you were married previously to a woman, and you have children, and you
I was not.
not married.
None of that. Right, none of that. Okay.
So did y'all meet after
Or before, or during, or?
Well, no, my ex-wife and I had split up. We were not officially divorced, but there was no...
Split because you were wanting a divorce or because you were gay?
Yes.
Both.
Yeah.
Well, I know straight
The answer is all of the above,
it was
yeah.
really me coming to terms with my sexuality, where I went through conversion therapy and all of that stuff. And so that process not only revealed a lot about me, it also revealed a lot about our relationship. So kind of came to that point of going, even if I had not been gay, it was becoming very evident that our relationship was quite dysfunctional as well.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
So the therapy was good. The conversion wasn't.
Did you guys have like a long dating? Did you move in quickly? What was that process?
we did date a long time,
Yeah.
but life was complicated at that time. So we did hit it off immediately. Like it wasn't a let's see where this goes. It was. We both were very interested.
Saw the fireworks.
Yeah, and it didn't take long for us to realize, wow, this is a good thing. However, I was in Elkhart, single dad, raising my 3 kids. I felt like the last thing I wanted to do was pick up and move them again to another school district or something. So I was like, I gotta stay here for my kids. David owned a house in South Bend that he wasn't just gonna sell, and so it was just complicated.
And it wasn't ready to sell, and I wasn't in a financial place. I didn't live in a good neighborhood, so it was just
So we just made the best of it for 5 years.
Yeah.
But that love was strong.
Oh my gosh, that's powerful.
Well, but I also think, if we had some other options, maybe we would have made other decisions. But in hindsight, I think that it was for the best. Because sometimes I think, folks are so ready,
Quick to rush.
just to be all in, balls to the walls. We're going to do this, and sometimes it's like, slow your roll. Yeah. You don't know somebody yet. And it doesn't mean it can't work out.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? But it's just like sometimes in any relationship, there has to be space where everything is not 0 to 100. And all resources. There has to be some time for things to breathe and things
you guys
to grow.
at that time, both of you were on that pump the brakes. You guys was one of you more wanting let's do this. It's coming on.
Well,
I was checking my marketing.
Okay. I was quicker to tell him I loved him and that kind of thing than he was. However, we both knew that we were kind of at an impasse as far as making things happen physically with moving and we recognized this isn't going to change. We have to put some time in, and so we're just going to have to make the best of it. So we did. We spent as much time together as we could in each other's spaces.
And it helped. I worked in the town where he lived, so I naturally had a reason to be there, so I could stop by after work, or we have dinner. I could spend the night.
Went to my kids' games. We went to the kids' school events and stuff together. And
how was that perceived back then? 2 things. For you, number one, coming out at such a later age in life and having to navigate not only being kind of a baby gay, experiencing things, but also having also children and like a whole like another life of not just your family but also work, and then also trying to experience things, and then on top of that living in kind of rural America, and you say 2006 or whatever, but it still had a lot of progression. So I mean, being a biracial couple, being in a small town, I'm assuming had friends or friends of your wives that kind of navigated through the process of your marriage and your kids, and now that you're divorcing, and understanding and hearing the reasons why you're getting divorced could have been...
Yeah, there were, I mean, without getting too deeply into it, just because it's a lot to unpack, but we moved, my ex-wife and I were in another town when I was pastoring a church. And so when I resigned my church, and...
Dun dun dun. The clock thickens.
When I resigned my church, I was going through XK therapy or conversion therapy, and we were like, okay. Okay, she had been homeschooling the kids, so it was like a major life change. And we decided we did not want to stay in that town while we tried to figure out what was next. So we moved to Elkhart. We didn't know anybody in Elkhart for the most part. We moved there because it was a very good conservative Christian community with conservative public schools and so on and so forth.
Perfect way.
And you met the love of your life there.
Right.
But that's what was leading up to that. We attended a large evangelical church for a while, and all this time I'm going through XK therapy and getting very discouraged with it. So by the time I had stopped all of that and David and I were together, then there were people from that church, yes. There were people who, I can't say anybody ever like to my face like came up and said
they
something,
have their opinions,
but you could feel it. Like you could just feel like
the Holy Spirit.
We would walk into even like school functions, and it didn't literally happen, but it felt like the seas parted. Like it just felt like you could tell people were like,
they're waiting for you to come in, girl.
Yeah.
Just melting down.
Fan, cracking the fan and everything.
Would you say that was when it was just you, or is that because of the
both.
identifying as gay or being in a biracial relationship? Like,
I mean, that first part, like for me, just even when I just was, I experienced so much. Even when people found out I was in conversion therapy.
Oh, yeah,
like people were. Back then. That wasn't even like.
That wasn't
to me, it was the equivalent of an alcoholic saying, "I'm in AA," and somebody going, "Oh,
I can't mess with you."
I got it. Sorry.
And so it's the same. I'm like, well, I'm telling you, I'm acknowledging that I have this problem, and I'm going to what is perceived to be the fix for that problem, and yet you're still rejecting me.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. What Jesus, what higher power is telling you to behave that way? Yeah. That's my whole thing. When we talk about religion, who you tell me who is telling you that's okay?
I confided when I was in the church, the evangelical, this big community church kind of thing. I thought it felt like, this coming from my conservative background, it felt like a progressive kind of environment. And so one of the pastors, honestly, I thought might be family as well. And, I can...
Hey, girl. We're about to find her. We're about to find her. I confided in him. Get the grinders, get your Facebook, get the Instagram.
I confided in him as to what was, what I was going through in my life at that time. And in about 2 weeks, I walked into church one Sunday morning, and I was ushered into a side room and found myself in a room full of elders.
Ew.
Who
not as hot as it sounds.
No, right. Were men that I didn't even know these men, and they knew everything, and they knew everything about me.
Wow.
Gossip queens.
Yeah. And I was told, I was warned, I was, all this kind of stuff.
How was that process for you? Knowing him and his background and living in that community and starting a relationship. I mean, that's a lot of baggage on its own to deal with someone.
It was. Yeah, no.
Like, girl, the fireworks, but...
Right, but...
I want to spark some fires.
Well,
and
some of that was partly behind why I was hesitant to respond with "I love you," when he
pause, we gotta tell that story.
Yeah.
I was like really,
this
really
is really
falling
good.
in love with him. I'm like, this guy's amazing. And so we were at a
Yes,
party.
where you at?
We were partying at a friend's house one night. It was a beautiful night. We were sat on the back deck in the dark, talking. And I remember saying, I don't remember how I said it, but I was like, I love you. What did I say?
No, you were just like, David, like, there was a change in the conversation. You're just like you normally see, like on a school movie, right. And then so there was that change in the tone of the conversation. It's like, David, I've just been reflecting on our time together and and I just need to tell you, like, I love you. Like, I don't want to be with anybody else. Like, I love you.
You want to hear what he said? He said, "Oh, do you?"
Oh my!
I'll be back. I'm gonna go drown this.
I was like, "Wow, that went over like a balloon."
Where, like, did you?
I think I'll go get a drink now.
Are you felt that coming and you were gonna say it, or were you just so shocked you were just like, that's all you had to say, or like, were you?
I think it was. I think that was all that I could muster up to say. That was not like, I didn't respond.
Super freak out response.
Yeah, like it wasn't a freak out response, but I was like, I am not gonna say I love him. Like, not right now. Even if that's what I'm feeling, I'm not gonna say that right now. And it was because of a lot of things. It was because the relationship was still very new to me. I felt like there was still a lot that needed to be figured out. Like, we had great conversations and I knew we connected, but I was just kind of like, this dude has not been out that long. And he's older and he's got kids. Like, that wasn't a deal breaker. Like, I knew he was a good man because I could see, how he took care of his kids and all of that. But I'm like, I got to figure out where he is on his journey because I've been out since I was in high school.
Wow.
I'm 26. I think that's how, 23 or 27, however. Like, I'm in my mid-20s. I've been out. I have carried. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to say I love you to someone who I'm not sure if they are, like, emotionally ready, and also I don't want them to, like, latch on to me as their safe,
or teacher,
or teacher, or like, I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
We gotta be. I need more information to see if we're gonna be equals, in as much as we can, given our distinct, differences.
It didn't feel.
And I explained some of that. I know I explained some of that in the moment. I didn't go that deep, but
calm down,
but I told them why.
You just found a box of dicks.
Oh.
You're eventually going to find a bag of them.
Okay.
And then you're going to move to another city, or you're going to get online, and there's going to be a lot more things to experience. I want to experience it. I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to go back to kindergarten.
Right. Okay. Right. And I mean,
like when you come out, there's that like whole like they call it baby gay. Like no matter how old you are, when you come out, like you have this.
There was a lot. There was a lot to just kind of like take in, and so soon thereafter, I would say maybe within the coming weeks, we continue to have conversations, and I clearly told him how much I loved him and how much I was ready to do this, and you guys have
been together this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
How has that been like impactful? I mean, you do come out kind of as a baby gay. Like, obviously, someone that came out a lot earlier than you did has experienced a whole bunch of different things and been in a culture and immersed in that whole thing where you are just kind of stepping in and then having kind of a teacher or a partner to be beside you. Like,
I mean, I wasn't that freshly out.
Well, not that everybody needs to come out and go to like circuit parties for 10 years. And
Right.
But like, you can on the floor.
Right.
So everybody, not everybody has
Right. You do not have to do that.
This is how like the internet was just becoming a big deal. So
So before there was no internet, my kids
before there were smartphones.
Children
was not that long ago.
Exactly.
It really wasn't.
So I had, as a closeted married man, the kids won't know this term either, but I was a cruiser. So that's,
PT cruiser? time?
No, I was full time.
Full time. Full time girl. Okay. He's a master cruiser right here.
I had found my sex fix in, you know, parks and malls and restrooms on, you know, all over the place. And so I formed that way sexually. So like it wasn't like I'd been in the closet in the sense that I've never ever been with a man.
Right.
And then when I finally came out, I did spend time because I met David like 2 years after I came out. So I spent that time. You know, I went to the gay bars and I felt like I did my spring fling, so to
Due
speak.
diligence.
What's the Amish rum spring?
Rum spring.
Yeah, I did rum spring.
2 years.
So I wasn't, but the other side of that story though is that because of my upbringing, which was very, very sheltered and conservative, I was lacking in just like pop culture knowledge and like.
But you also had kids.
I had kids.
I feel like kids are very like.
But your kids
pop
were
culture.
the kids were raised in
Right, they were
conservative.
homeschooled.
So I mean, like I had big gaps of like knowledge and just kind of what I don't know a better term for. I wasn't like worldly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I just.
We're also just saying that if you don't know who Justin Bieber is, that doesn't mean you're not worldly. Pop culture references, if there's gaps, that doesn't mean you're not worldly.
There's a story I
You can
read.
skip Kanye and
Right.
And still be worldly.
There's a story I write about in my book that is about a moment during that time when I was first going out to gay bars. And this will give you some point of reference for where I was before this. And I was on the dance floor and I was just starting to get to know music. It was starting to sound familiar to me because I didn't listen to it. Like I knew that there was a Cher. I knew that there was a Madonna.
Mm-hmm.
I knew these names.
Yeah,
I couldn't have told you a single song by them. I didn't know what they sounded like. I just hear these names. So I've been going out enough, and I was on the dance floor one night, and this song came on, and I was like, "Oh, I love this song! I remember this. I've danced this a few other times, and I remember it being really infectious." And and so I'm out on the dance floor dancing, and for the first time, I started listening to the lyrics, and I was like, "Wait a minute!" And it was like a prayer.
Aww.
And I started listening to the lyrics and thinking about that. All of a sudden, I went, "Wait a minute! This must be Madonna." Because I was like, because I do remember Madonna being very controversial and these religious references and stuff, and so it hit me. But that was like 2004, and that was the first.
Like in 1980.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the first moment I finally thought, oh, that must be Madonna.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. There was some big gaps
Oh,
there.
1992.
You know.
It'd be such an interesting song for you to correlate with and like resonate with, that you loved it and you thought about it.
Yes.
Coming from your religious background, and that
Yes.
song had such religious connotation and undertones to it,
Yeah.
overtones as well, where
Yeah.
it had like a black person, there was some of sex, there was burning of crosses,
Yeah.
there was scantily clad women,
And there was like a
black
gospel
choirs.
choir
Yeah.
backing
Yeah.
it.
You went all out.
Madonna
All
did it
in.
all. If we're
All
gonna
the
do it, we're gonna do
video,
it.
all the one video.
Mhm.
She's like, you're being extra. She's like, hold my Pepsi. I'm about to be real extra.
Okay.
Yeah, she lost like a $1 million
She did.
Pepsi endorsement deal because of that video.
Mhm.
And she was like, nah, here's your money back. We're
Yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was. That time was just very interesting. I know you were kind of talking about the environment, like being in Indiana, and so, in a sense, for me, like, I had been in Indiana my whole life. Like, I did my undergrad there. I traveled abroad, for school, but ended up coming back.
Fall in love.
Yeah, you're right. To fall in love. But like, in a sense, I walked boldly and confidently with how I had been raised and the support that I had from home. Like I did not go through my life with any kind of religious baggage. I was not brought up in any kind of a conservative home. Mm-hmm. I was always encouraged to be the best, and not from a pressure standpoint. You got to get straight A's, but like I was encouraged to explore, and do things. And so like my whole background was just kind of like, well, yeah, if you want to do it, you can just do it, and aside from just
live your truth,
right, live your truth, and of course, my mom had some issues when I came out, but ultimately, like she was fine. Her biggest concern was she was concerned for my safety, and she didn't want anything to mess up my future. That was her biggest concern. She didn't really care that I was gay, you know. So once we got to that, it's like, it was fine. She loved me. But so like, I didn't come from, it was like, this is like night and day, you know?
Oh.
And so.
That structured and ingrained fear.
Right.
I feel like that religion often brings.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, so, you know, I felt confident and based on our time, you know, kind of our initial few months together, I was like, oh yeah. Like, he's got his head on straight. Thank God. It's a surprise that he does, because coming out of all of that, you know. But, like, he's a good man. He knows right from wrong. And he is committed to making his life better and also encouraging his children to live their lives in a way that he was not able to. So to me, it was kind of like those were the elements that were important. And I was like, we'll figure the rest of this shit out.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, because that's just kind of relationship. You know, we'll work on it. We'll figure it out, you know?
You asked earlier about, like, racial, I don't know.
Oh,
like
yeah, that's right. That's
or
where I was
whatever.
going to go, yeah.
Again, we've always been in the mindset of live our lives, be 100% us wherever we are. Like, don't try to hide, cover, any of that stuff. And I think while that can be scary at times, overall, most people don't have the courage to actually confront or say things to your face. They can say whatever they want behind your back.
Right.
So I can say that I can count on maybe one hand the number of times we've had a racial or homophobic slur uttered in our presence.
Yeah.
But I will say we have been in many environments where you just feel that,
you know,
that sense of discomfort, either because we're gay or because we're gay and biracial.
Who knows?
And it can come from anybody. Like, for me, it is one of the interesting things for me is I noticed is that the time I felt it the most was from, like, the older black church ladies. That is where I would come in with David and they'd look at me like,
who this cracker?
Took
one of our good ones, huh?
Right.
That's how it felt. You know, it's kind of like, I'm sorry.
What you say?
You know,
this is my gardener. This is my job. We go, right?
But then the other would just would be that people, you could just tell when people are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's generally from white people. I mean, I understood the church religious component of these elderly black women that, you know, but I don't think, I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, yeah, you're right. I mean, like, you know, I am never going to say that race doesn't matter, because it always does. And we got plenty of examples of that, right? But we have never walked around making it matter. Okay, like, I don't need to lead with it. I don't need to make it an issue. I don't need to arrive at conclusions that it is an issue for someone else. If you want to treat me a certain way because of it, well, then we'll deal with that when you act a fool. Act a fool, get fool treatment, so to say, right?
I like that.
So, but like,
that was my follow-up.
But yeah, because it's just kind of like, okay, you want to go
and
there.
that has happened.
That has happened.
Yes.
And we have had to check people, you know, sometimes throughout the years, but it has been very few and very far between. And I think that's because we already operate with this energy. No, we don't play that, number one. We are here, we are about bringing people together. So if you're going to come at us with some energy that is not about bringing people together, well then, okay, well, you asked for it. And so that automatically, I think, disarms people. Even the people with the most, who may be very sharp at doing it elsewhere, they don't be coming for us like that. Because it's like, in a sense, it's like, homie, don't play that. We don't play that, so don't even, you know, why would you even do that? You know?
Like, or what advice would you give to, like, new couples who may be experiencing something like that?
Sure. Well, I think, what comes to mind for me is, and we've talked about this many times over the years, you know, sometimes it just depends on the day and the moment. Sometimes you don't have the energy to deal with foolishness. And sometimes, you know, you let something slide. Right. And sometimes you do.
Sometimes you do.
Actually, I've got a free day.
Okay, I got it.
You picked the right one today.
Okay.
Come on,
Come on. Let's talk about it, right? But, you know, But to new couples or people who are really, in the throes of trying to figure out, their identity and how much they need to fight or crusade, it's like every day, everything can't be a fight. Because when it is, that's going to end up costing you.
Takes away.
Yeah.
It's costing your goodness. It's costing what it is that you really need to be doing in the world. Mm-hmm. So you need to pick your battles very carefully. Just because somebody say something crazy doesn't mean you need to come out of pocket. Because it's just not, it's not always worth it. And so we have tried to be like, okay, well, these are the circumstances where it is worth it. When it comes to the kids, when they were younger and supporting them.
Well, what's worth it for you?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And what's worth it in that moment, what's worth it in the long term. And then sometimes, we don't address it immediately because the two of us need to kind of talk about it and figure it out before we decide what it is we want.
There's been times when we're like, let's go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because
it's like we don't
have been people. There have been people who have tried to push up on him or try to create a wedge between us or disrespect me and act like I'm not
just
there.
Say really
and I'm like,
ignorant things.
And they will just say ignorant stuff, and I'm like, you know what? No, I'll have no energy because if I say one thing, if something comes out of my mouth, I already know everybody up in here gonna hear it. It's gonna be a scene. And I ain't trying to do that. I'm trying to have a good time tonight. So we go,
if I can give advice to couples, especially if they're biracial couples, is really talk about these things in advance and come up with some
game plan.
Yeah, and some ways to respond.
Right.
Some simple ways to respond to something. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm always at the philosophy: you give people enough rope, they'll hang themselves.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes it's not about engaging. Just something you can just something as simple as just saying, "What do you mean by that?" Mm-hmm. And then you just be quiet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because most people are like, they don't know what they mean by it. They're just repeating something that
it doesn't mean anything.
Yes. And another really powerful thing I found is sometimes it sounds really funny, but it's just to go, I disagree. And then there's that silence. People aren't used to.
They are not.
Then they will feel compelled to say more. Because they always will, and you're just like, I disagree.
Had a guest on Montana and we were talking about consent and we were talking about how to, voice those things. And I was like, I'm a very direct person. Mm-hmm. And so I will be a person and be like, I'm sorry, what did you mean by that? Or what'd you say? Mm-hmm. Or, no, that's wrong. Mm-hmm. Let's start there. Mm-hmm. Put the car in reverse.
Okay.
But I think that's a lot of our culture too. It's people have gotten so used to gossiping or whispering or hiding behind keyboard that once it comes to up front, when you say something, you'd be like, and a lot of times in my experience, with people that have done that, and then I've confronted them like, oh, hey, David, it's good to see you. Can you come here for a minute? Mm-hmm. And now we're together. I'm like, so did you or did you not write this on social media and say this about me? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, and I was like, well, if you did, cool, but what did you mean? Do we have beef? Is there a problem?
Right.
And most people
are
like,
to figure something
no. And I'm like, is it because I'm embarrassing you in front of your friends? Because if we were at home and you were behind a keyboard, would this conversation be different? But now that I'm asking you a direct question in front of your face, in front of people that you're around, and also there's a time and a place, but I'm a big proponent of calling people out in the moment and squashing shit from the jump and not letting it create ripple effects.
Sure.
And also, I've been in that situation.
That works for you.
It does. It works for me. Some people aren't comfortable with that, but also those are some of those people that are constantly like, why are these people saying bad things? And I was like, go over there and talk to that person. They're here.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you don't have to make a scene like, hey,
you don't have to make a scene.
How are you?
Right.
Can I speak to you for just a moment?
It shocks people when you do that.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Well, and handling things like that, with that language that you just used, is so absent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that is why things escalate and morph into something else so quickly. And I'm just like, you see and you hear things and I'm just kind of like, well, I already know why they reacted that way because you came at them sideways.
Yeah, right.
You can't expect resolution when everybody is coming at each other sideways. Model the behavior that you expect.
And people make mistakes. You have to give them grace. And just because maybe I did something that pissed David off or said something and maybe in the heat of the moment he wrote something on social media or told one of my best friends, I can go to him and he was like, you know what, I did say that. And I could be like, I have one of two options. Be like, fuck you, with all your friends and blah, blah, blah. Or I can be like, you know what? That really hurt my feelings that you felt that way.
Yeah.
I 100% did not mean to come off that way.
Right.
I am sorry. I will take responsibility. But what you said and what you did also hurt my feelings. Like, can we move forward and be friends? Or is this something like we're done? Because, like, I'm cool with both. I'm going to leave that in your court.
Yeah.
So it is about language.
That's
it's about being
healthy
an adult
conflict resolution.
and having conversations
Right.
as an adult.
Correct.
And pulling those emotions outside of it.
Yeah.
Even if they're like, I have all the tools, I just don't know how to use them.
Yeah.
But I think that we should take that over into our regular life as well. And especially too what you said, what you can tell interracial couples and even all couples, communication is key. Communication with your partner.
Hey,
Also,
talking about communication and preparing. So, So what's the title of your book and what's it about?
So it's a memoir, and the title is called Godly But Gay. And then the subtitle is a story of contradictions, conversion therapy, and coming out. And so I tell the story of really the contradiction part is that I grew up in a very conservative, fundamentalist Baptist home. And usually when I say that, people are like, oh, you mean like Southern Baptists? I'm like, no, we thought the Southern Baptists were too liberal. And I usually say, imagine the softer side of the Westboro Baptist Church. That's more what I grew up in.
Yeah.
And
the softer.
so we weren't quite that.
He said imagine. Okay, right.
But we were on our way to that. And we didn't carry the signs and stuff. But
You carried them in your heart.
no, but we're just very extreme. Very extreme. And so growing up in that world, I always knew I was gay. Always. From as young as I can remember. I didn't use the term gay, but I knew there was something going on with me. And I also simultaneously knew that everything I'd ever heard from the pulpit, from preachers, from everybody was just horrible. Like, it was just awful. And so it became obvious that I could be a good, godly person, by whatever godly meant.
Yes.
But the moment, and I could do it all right, and everybody would love and respect me, which they did. The whole time I was gay, but I knew if they ever found that out, all of that godliness would be thrown into the trash.
Yeah.
It could never be both. And that's why the title is Godly But Gay, not Godly and Gay. And I've had a lot of people be like, should it be Godly and Gay? I'm like, no. Because in the world I grew up in, you could never be both. You had to choose between one or the other. And then
that's still the reality
it's
for
still
a lot of
reality,
people.
yes.
And that's still very true.
So it was that contradiction of never being able to be myself, because I knew if I did, it would discredit, no matter how much good it was, would discredit everything else. And then, so then for me, it was the journey of trying to figure out how to fix myself from this. Because it was like a sin problem in my mind. And so I kept thinking the next right thing I did would somehow change me. Eventually, it all came to a head, both literally and physically. I mean, literally and not. But where my life was so stressful. I had started a church from scratch, and I'd spent a decade on a staff at a church, and then I moved to South Bend and started a church from scratch, and that was grueling, incredible work. But the stress just made me want an escape more and more and more. And this is also when internet came around and chat rooms, and so it became easier and easier and easier to find that sex hookup. And through the turning point for me when I started XA therapy was that I hooked up with a guy who turned out to be the Methodist pastor. And so it was that hookup that we both were like, okay,
do a revival.
We need help.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
So then I went into XA therapy with Exodus International, or conversion therapy as it's called now. And I spent nearly 3 years in conversion therapy trying to get fixed until it became evident that was not going to happen no matter what.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
Actually.
And so then I did the coming out process. And the interesting thing is that during that time, I felt like the poster child of conversion therapy. I was like going to the retreats and reading the books and these conferences, and I knew, and all of these national speakers, pretty much almost all of them have come out since. And one of them has written a cover blurb for the back of my book.
What?
So anyway, it can be pre-ordered at my website, joelspeaksout.com. It'll be out in May.
That was my next
On your website?
Mhm.
Yes.
Joel Speaks Out.
Speaks Out. Sorry,
That's
I
out.
went too fast.
Mhm.
What did you, like as you're writing, there is that process, like a cathartic process, I would feel as like putting pen to paper and turning those thoughts.
Fingers to keyboard.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
He's a digital
Wow.
girl. He's a digital girl.
Wow.
That was a slight dig.
Good.
That was a
He-
slight dig to you.
He
That
said
was an
keyboard to
indirect
keep
dig.
it real.
First of all, I'm good. I write cursive. I'm okay. I know that. Oh, I can write calligraphy. I can do cursive. I can write capital letters. I just practiced my J's yesterday.
Can you do a capital Q?
Yes. 4 ways. You want a French one?
She's a versatile girl.
I'm smart.
I don't know.
What did you learn in that process for yourself that maybe hadn't, like that you realized as you're writing all this down and formulating your book? Like,
I have processed so much, but that it wasn't like a traumatic experience to write it, but I will say I realized how traumatic the experience was. It wasn't like, oh,
Like
I'm triggered in trauma and all this.
No.
It was just more like,
it's that objective view.
yeah, it was just like, that was bullshit.
And even now, like, talking about it and now your book's coming out, and like, I mean, do you have plans to do book signings or do anything like that? And like, how do you feel like that's going to be like constantly? Because obviously when people read their books, they're going to want to talk to you about it. And it's like, do you think, have you thought about like that? Is that going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I've been telling this story for so many years now that honestly, it is not traumatic. It's not triggering for me. I'm able to just talk about it.
Yeah.
And I'm passionate about it. I was from the beginning of like, you know what? I will never shut up about this. I had that conversation with myself because I'm like, somebody's got to talk about this stuff. And so I've just talked about it so much that it's not painful. I'm healed,
How's that like talking about it? And have you had experiences where people have like either come to you or broke down like in the middle and been like, this happened to me too and I didn't realize, or like you having to now kind of, I'm in a good place and I felt something, but you are clearly like, I know what you're going through and this is a lot for you, but that's also going to be a lot to take home, every day being like, hey boo, how was your day? I did this and this. Also, 4 people broke down and cried in front of me and I really had to like lay the hands of Jesus on them and heal them. Are we having spaghetti or are we doing no carbs tonight? Like that's a lot of stuff to bring home because it's a very, very difficult subject and it's very sensitive and it's very, I would even say up until recently, like super taboo and not spoken about just because of the fear, the shame, and also a huge cover-up that religion does.
I've gotten a lot of emails over the years from people that have just poured their heart out to me.
Delete.
Everything from like I had a Catholic nun that emailed me one day. I've had preachers reach out on behalf of their son. I've had like lots of that kind of stuff, and some of that is very just like I just want to be like but I also really relate to where they are, and so generally it's a little time consuming. I've kind of come up with I hate to say template, but like I kind of know here's what you need.
The stories. There are common themes no matter what the story, and so because of that you've been able to develop. Okay, this is what you need.
I'm like, look, I've learned like some of the most important things you can say to people. And so I try to say those things to them in those moments because I know how much they need to know that they're not alone. And that there are people like us everywhere, and that it's not their fault. And, like these kinds of things that you just are like, and then give them some hope. And like one of the things I tell them is like, it won't always be like this. I don't really like that it gets better because I can't guarantee that. But I can tell you it won't always be like this.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is under your control too. And it's really not dependent on other people. It's dependent on you. And so I try to just use that kind of language because I love people. I really do. That is I love people and I get my energy from people and I've always wanted to make a difference in whatever I'm doing. And so
we are both very service oriented in that way, like our occupations and our pursuits, it's very like, no, like what we do has to matter. Like, you know, and not that other people's jobs, you know, don't matter.
For you, that gives you the purpose.
You make sure that you're
that we're making a difference.
I will
present or being like
mindful.
Mindful.
Yeah.
How is that like translated too? Because I know I have a close friend and somebody that's been on our show, Anora Wade, who has really helped with trying to pass bills to ban conversion therapy and things like that. And I think didn't the city of Lawrence just
did, yeah.
Like
they just banned it.
Weeks ago, they just banned conversion therapy.
Oh wow. Okay.
And that's a long process.
Here's the I participate. I spoke at Kansas City's when we banned it, and I am 100% behind or in favor of these bans. But it's important for people to understand. A lot of times I think the average public, they're still going, wait, what is this thing? And this is a deal,
It sounds so antiquated, and it sounds so.
I still have people going, what?
I still do that.
Yeah. But the problem with the bans, I read back about a year and a half ago, I read every single state or municipal ban that had been passed because I wanted to see what the wording was.
In the nation.
In the nation.
Yeah.
I went through every single one of them and read them. Found that they were all pretty much identical. But I wanted to make sure. But here's what they do. What they do is say, you can't do. Yeah, what they do is say, conversion therapy, and they define that in some form. Should not be practiced on minors. And if someone is caught doing so, their state license will be rescinded. I agree. However, conversion therapy is rarely practiced by a state licensed therapist.
It's like
and it's not limited to minors.
And it's not limited to minors.
Yeah.
And so, you could be 18 and, think back when you're 18, if you were coming from that kind of mindset, you could still be really, really influenced by someone in a therapist situation. Because, I don't know, the counselors that I had, I'm not sure whether they were state therapists certified or not. I don't really know. But generally, conversion therapy is practiced by faith-based organizations of some sort. And so the sad thing about these bans is they're good. They make a statement. They will not stop conversion therapy until we get serious about the religious organizations that are actually doing this. And they now keep changing the language. So I don't know anybody that would admit to practicing conversion therapy. They coined a new term called reintegrative therapy. I want to be clear, I'm all for these bans. I'm not saying don't worry about those. They're good, but we have a bigger job. It's just the start.
Burn down churches.
We need to change the culture, change society.
Yes.
We need to be inclusive. We need to be respectful and accepting of others.
Exactly.
That's it.
That's it.
So we're not burning.
We can still burn the ones that don't want to change. I'm not saying you don't have to do that. But there's still people going through that trauma and experiencing that pain.
Yeah. No, it's very real.
It's so scary, and it's so sad, and a lot of it too, like you said, like it's faith-based, religious-based, and if you even look at the structure, I'm sure a lot of parents that are doing that, they're so, I would say, like enslaved to a religion that they don't even probably ask questions about like, where is your licensing? Like, where is your I'm just going to give you my kids, you fix them. They're not thinking about like, who are you to be structured enough to do something like this? And if this is right or wrong, or the healthiest choice for whatever.
Right. And that's because you're giving it up to the Lord. You're giving it. You're just going to pray about it, and you're going to trust that the Lord is blessing the process. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, have no faith, boo. But that's going to crazy levels about your faith.
When your faith blinds you to the point that you can't question someone else, that's not your faith anymore.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. Or your faith itself.
And there's no science behind it whatsoever. And pretty much anybody can say, oh, I've come up with a way.
Should we get together and start like a reverse conversion, so we take straight people.
I've often said that,
and then we'll make them gay.
I've often said it because
It
wait.
has to be possible if it's possible.
People already think we kind of do that anyway. They be getting mad
That's not
sometimes when
true.
we come in.
If anybody is mobilized and can
I'm not
organize,
certified, but I'll turn you gay. Trust and believe in the Lord.
we'll have you
Bow
on your
down.
knees in
Okay.
no time.
But it's very
Underneath
similar.
flesh.
It's in the same sense that if you take a right-handed person and say, I want to make you left-handed, I can learn how to better use my left hand. I can even become fairly good at it, but I am still right-handed.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Doesn't change it.
This will. It just means I've become ambidextrous a little bit. You know,
Bisexual.
Bisexual. Okay, right.
so it's like the same kind of thing. It's like you can't change this. Like
Right.
Yes, like, because I went through the white knuckling phase. Of
You
like,
can be a white
"Ah,"
person
you
and
know.
you can go to a tanning bed every single day and do spray tanner. You could be as dark as a black person, but you're still white.
You
It's
still
so
white.
white.
Yes,
You're not
Yes,
white.
Rachel.
Mhm.
Rachel Dolezal.
I was trying to remember her name.
Oh, Rachel Dolezal. Yes. Oh, Lord. Bless her heart.
Bless her heart.
Yes.
Yes.
Mint in all the ways. Yeah, mint in all the ways.
So many.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, when you think about all of this, like within the religious context and how a lot of that has historically affected the way in which our society deals with anything, race, gender, all of
A
the
pandemic.
Right. Yeah, all of it. What happens when we take something too far?
Yes.
And it don't even have to be just religion. It could be a disbelief in science.
Mm-hmm.
It could be when we go too far with things. Extremes are never, that is not where we need to stay.
Yes.
Sometimes we have moments in our life where that's maybe where we need to be. That's okay because we're learning. It could be a period of growth. But it should really be about balance. And also, you were saying earlier, integration and access, talking everyone, like the balance should be how do we go about things so that everyone can have some kind of benefit,
Yes.
where we are all succeeding and where we are all accepted,
Yeah.
to some degree. And that doesn't mean we gotta just totally not have disagreement or think, somebody on some journey right now, or, we can still have our opinions, but we still need to be able to come back to the core belief that that person is worthy of and deserves the opportunity to figure themselves out, to choose this path for their life. We should not be, going about things that take away those options. And our nation has never really operated that way. So that's kind of the reason why we have the problems that we have.
No, really.
That's what a lot of black folks have been feeling with a lot of all of this stuff that's just the past 12 months to 24 months. But we can look, there's plenty of instances.
Just pick a day.
That's just
Just
what's
pick it
documented.
That's just what's documented,
on
right?
video.
Well,
Like we just tired.
It's
Like
been documented
it's just,
because of jumping technology and social
Yes.
media and giving a platform, and also I think 2020 was a huge proponent because at that
It
time
was.
people had time. They
They
weren't
had
working.
time.
They were locked up in their homes, so all they had was social media.
They had to bear witness.
see the world.
that's right.
And
That's
what they
right.
showed was media, but the great part too is that media wasn't the only thing that was being shown. Everybody's personal camera was out in somewhere filming something.
Yeah.
And George Floyd's example in particular was one of those examples that there wasn't really any gray area. You know what I mean? Like everybody likes to pick apart and go, well, they did that. It's like we just watched.
They sure did. Like
They
do
tried.
to try to find gray area.
But it made it did. I think
That's the
It made
allow
us look even more
because
ridiculous to other countries.
I think-
Correct.
yeah, I
and
think
that's
it allowed.
people don't want to accept the
Yeah,
truth.
that's it. But
That's
I
what
do
it
think
is.
it allowed a greater number of people to
I
go.
don't think we'll accept our sensibility.
They're watching it. It's pretty undeniable. At least it should be. And so I think it was a wake up call for a lot of white people to go, that's not right.
I
That's
thought we were
unacceptable."
fine because we had Civil Rights Act. Or I thought
We had a
were
black
fine.
president.
Yeah,
My
we
mom
had a
wears
black
pants.
president.
We're
My
good,
mom
right?
wears-
Oprah's a billionaire. We're fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Everyone loves it. I just thought about buying her favorite things. I can't afford them, but I watched it and I wanted to buy them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do think 2020 was good, and I don't hate to use the word good. But the 2020 was
eye-opening.
Yes.
in that sense. And I even just heard a thing on NPR the other day talking about that very thing.
My
About,
interview?
I think it was.
Yeah.
So you were.
No, but I was also saying like eye-opening not just for the fact of like what's happening culturally and globally around the world with the pandemic, with racism, with everything, but like it got me to even open my eyes to people that I grew up with and old like family members, and I'm like, bitch, you're brown, how you racist?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
We're done.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that. I'm good.
I mean, and it's just, it's,
You got
yeah.
to see everything. You got to see so many parts of people that you never thought you would see.
Right.
And
I
a
think
lot
we
of
got
them
to see
ugly.
the best parts of people too. We got to see the things that pull us together
Right.
as humans and that define us as an opportunity to build from this and to make a better
I
society.
got to experience that. I did. I got to build bridges with
You did.
I got
You
to
really
hang
did.
out and really like cultivate relationship with Korea and Moon and CC and transformations and them like giving. And I got to see an influx of people in our community. And I would say the people that, a lot of people that came to like donate stuff and drop off stuff were not people that I thought would be able to. I thought were like, when I looked back and like even like the time hops and I'm like remembering those days and I'm just like, my friends that had access, my friends that were rich, like none of those people donated time or money. It was people in our community that didn't have very much. But they're like, I have like this much, but like you guys can have this much to give away to whoever. And like that's impactful. And you got to see
Yeah.
a lot of humanity and like what it
Yes.
was. And the volunteers that came in that were, I got to read the trolls and be like, you can't believe you're there, and you guys aren't like, you know, you should be social distancing and blah, blah, blah. But then I got to see people that were like-minded, that were just like, yeah, I have, you know, I live with my elderly parents and my grandparents and they're sick or whatever, like they could be, like, they're not, but like I want to give back to my community.
Right.
And very much like that's how I felt. I was like, I had just lost a parent, but also I felt like there's such a need right now. Like I would rather risk my health knowing that I could help somebody, because if I die, like what was my life worth?
So-
Sitting at home. Like,
I look at life in the sense of it's important that we all use our voice, and only we know how our voice is best used and what that voice sounds like, looks like. And then we have to choose very carefully when, how, where we use that voice. And the older I've gotten, I will be 55 on Tuesday. I have realized I only have so many fucks to give, and so I have to choose very carefully where I use them. And I can't be involved in everything, but I also need to care, and I need to be involved in more than just me, because I think that the danger of the self-care emphasis is that sometimes that's all you end up doing is just caring for yourself. You know, and it's like,
everything becomes a habit.
yeah, and it becomes
And then
just
it all becomes
very
about you.
internal focused, and it's like,
Right.
so I encourage people, like, there are so many good things to be involved in, but you can't do everything. Like, figure out how do you best use your voice. This moment really came home to me during the George Floyd, during the protests. I don't want to use George's name in that, but on the plaza after his murder, where I was like, I don't know, should I be down there? And like, you know, going through this, like, I don't know, maybe I should, but yet feeling all these different ways. And so finally I went down for the one where it was more of a daytime thing. And I thought, well, I'll go down. It was the LGBT protest or whatever. But I went down there and I stood around for a little while and I was like, no, I'm not supposed to be down here. And that's okay. Like, how can I use my voice instead? Like, this is not the best use of my voice. I have never been the scream and shout kind of person. Like, I'm glad someone else is. I'm not against it. I want someone else to do it. But I went home going, but how can I get involved and make a difference?
we like literally had the same conversation, you know? It's like,
Yes.
Wes felt a little bit that too. It's like, I don't feel like I need to be down there. There are other ways that I can utilize my time, my energy, and I just don't feel compelled. And like that conversation, he's like, and that's okay to not be like, not everybody has to be a frontline person. Not everybody is, a warrior that stands up like all the time. Like some people do it from a blog or write a book or volunteer to pass out a can of food to a stranger. Like, there's so many ways that you can do things and be impactful. You don't always have to be on the front line, and that's okay.
Yeah, it is.
So
And
it's 100%.
you're better off to use your skills the way you're best suited to use them. You will
Use
have
your
much
strengths.
greater impact.
What you said earlier
Stay
too, like if we had a society where we didn't have to worry about, healthcare and everybody just did what they were really good at, because honestly, not everybody needs to be a doctor. Not everyone needs to be. If we had a whole country full of lawyers, we would get plumbing done. We would have everybody has their part to play. Everybody has their skill set. Yeah.
Right.
Not everybody can be, RuPaul's next trying to start a superstar. Well, you can, but I mean, no.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's powerful, and it's awesome to
Yeah.
know and understand that, and give yourself time and space to figure out your position, where your voice is, where you need to utilize it, what's best going to be best for you, and be able to do that. And that's another, communicating with yourself, listening to yourself, listening to the things around you, and your,
But there's a sense of empowerment that comes with that too. Knowing where your space is and where you can be most impactful, regardless of what the situation is. As long as it's helping move that needle.
I mean, the solution is not say, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to watch Netflix. That's
not a solution. That's a perpetuation of everything that's wrong.
I think that I'm really good at Netflix, so I'm just going to do that.
Exactly. Okay.
Or we got the rest of it.
Right, okay.
I can Hulu.
But yeah, no, it's so interesting. I mean, we're still, and Joel and I have talked about this a lot, over the past year and few months here, but I think the impact of this pandemic and the effects of it, especially from a social, psychological kind of perspective, are still very much forthcoming, in development, very much happening, very real. Yeah. I think a lot of us don't even really realize how it has impacted us, in certain ways. We've got some ideas and we've been able to pinpoint some things.
We're still kind of on the tail end of it. I mean,
we're not even at a year.
Yeah,
I know.
We're not.
I mean, it's just, but to have a year where our activities and our ability to connect with each other has been so hampered in some of those meaningful ways. There is power in sharing space, physical space with other people. There is something intrinsic in that cannot be replicated.
Yeah.
I realize that where I can use my voice in the best, strongest way is by speaking to other white people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I haven't done a lot of it lately, but I did a series called White People Dialogue Starters, because I'm like, okay, white people, we got a problem. We need to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with you being stupid and ignorant, because we all got to start someplace.
Yeah.
So as long as you're willing to actually have some dialogue, let's just start talking about these things, because that way you're not going to your friends of color or your acquaintances of color and asking them.
The burden.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, let's talk about this. And so then I would be like, watch this video, read this story, and I tried to find something that was academic, but yet still attainable. But not just some Vanity Fair magazine or something, you know what I mean? It was like I was trying to find something and I'm like, this should be thought-provoking to you. And so watch this and think about it. And, and talk about it. Let's talk about it, And so I try to constantly go back to that, because I feel like that's where my voice is strongest, is when I'm saying, I've never minded creating those spaces to have somewhat uncomfortable conversations. I'm okay with that.
Hi, welcome to Unboxed. We're here to talk about uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah. Well, I always say I kind of like making people
These are
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable questions.
Okay.
I like making people uncomfortable, not in a way.
I think it helps them grow.
But because it's when you get uncomfortable that you go, oh, maybe I do need to think differently, or maybe it gives you that, like I said, the opportunity to grow and change. Because as long as you're comfortable, you're not. If that couch is comfortable, you are very unlikely to get off of it, right? But as soon as it becomes
yeah. Well, it's great too, and I think that we had a conversation, the very beginning of the day, and we were talking. I had a lot of anxiety this week, having to write questions because they were very poignant, and my perception of it, and watching some of this stuff. And Wes came in today, and he was talking about how he went on a conference and learned they asked like how many people of color or whatever. I was like, I don't know. But the reality is, it's like everyone around him is a person of color. But he's like, I don't see color. But he's like, I realized that was a wrong mindset, and that kind of diminishes when you say that, like, oh, I don't see color. Like the reality is, it's like we're not all created equal, and everybody has a color. And
you acknowledge who they are.
And I was like, that's something that you should probably share, because I think sometimes when people watch shows like this or meet people like us that are advocates, or that are people that they may put on a pedestal, or have this like whole air about like us being educated and knowing this and being like in the vacuum and whatever, it's like we still are human, and we still have times that we make errors, or that we don't realize that some of our behavior is maybe a little backwards or toxic or whatever, but like we're still learning too. And I think even as queer people, there's so many things that, 5 years ago, working in this industry for 20 years, 5 years ago coming to Woody's, like I had no comprehension of what it was like to even have a trans friend or non-binary, and those are things that I've learned, and working in a space where very much called like an all-inclusive, very diverse, safer space, like what that really looked like. I went through a lot of like growth and education within my own community, where it's like, I'm gay, it's my community, I like know everything, but the reality was they didn't. And things shift and things change.
And you're obviously you're constantly learning.
You should be.
Well, and hopefully that's like taking what you learn and
and applying it and expanding upon it.
I was like, there's still a lot of opportunity for growth and potential.
There always is. Yeah, there always is. And when we stop seeking that out, or when we don't even know that is valuable, or don't accept that is valuable, that's the biggest problem right there. Because then it's like, okay, why are you against learning?
Right.
Why are you against additional perspectives? Right. Those are why. I'm not saying you can't still believe what you want to believe. I ain't taking nothing away from you, but why? And so
I will.
Right.
I'll burn your church down.
See, but at the core of it, because that question,
change is
that's what it's about.
The whole thing is about change, and change is what gives us progression. Change is what sets us apart from other animals. We're able to adapt, we're able to move forward, we're able to run faster, become smarter, open up like our views on things, and treat each other like humans and not like savage animals that
will eat their young.
Like people in history have done, and people in history that were against change were people like Hitler, and we saw how that worked out. Savage, brutal.
Or the Confederates.
Savage, brutal.
This in our own country.
I know. I think it's I'm when Joel and I, when we said yes, to kind of when we're figuring out the details and all of that, I was like, we've always been very appreciative of the show. We haven't been able to watch all the episodes, but I know. We'll catch up.
For our next segment, we're going to be watching every single episode with Joel and
like a reaction video.
We'll see you back in 5 days.
Okay, right.
Marathon.
Okay. We're just so thankful for the opportunities to have this kind of dialogue, because it doesn't happen anywhere near as much as it should within our own community.
Why do you think
LGBTQ
why do you think
brethren.
Conversations and stuff like this don't happen often?
And you know what? I should rephrase that.
Or maybe on a public platform, because I'm sure within friendships they probably do often, but they don't always expel until like.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be concerned about that, because to me it's like, if you was talking about this kind of stuff with your friends, your behavior and your attitude would be different about some stuff.
That is so true.
So
because your friends hold you accountable.
Well, they should.
I have a challenge for the viewers and for all of us to help address this that we've been talking about. Yeah. And that is, yes, we could create spaces and, all that kind of stuff. But if every one of us would just, let's say 3 times in 2021 would have a group of friends, a small group of friends over with this intention, not have a house party, but to say, we're going to...
We know where your hands was at.
Thank you for defining it.
To come over and say, we're going to be intentional about connecting. We're going to either do something like this or find something, just be like, here, we're going to put our phones down. We're going to actually listen and share over a particular topic or a group of questions or whatever. And if everybody would do that in like I say, 3-4 times in the next year, that would have an amazing ripple effect.
Yes,
That's the way the community would start building itself in an organic kind of way without having to go find a location. That's all great. And that might happen at some point in time.
Relationships will form and develop and deepen because of that.
Community will strengthen.
So that's my challenge.
Yeah. What do you think your resolution is for lack of mentorship in the LGBT community? I know that I think we've addressed this before too, and talking about, like a whole generation died in the 80s from the AIDS epidemic, that should have been.
If it was treated like COVID was treated,
right?
All those people would be here.
But I will say, in response to that, while that is very true, there are still a whole bunch of people that didn't die. And that are here and have made it. And in some form, and I'm not defining what made it means, but they're still around. Like I look at, I can think of some couples that have been together like 40 plus years.
Where do I find them?
And I'm just like, I want to know, like, tell me about that.
Yeah.
This isn't.
That was like what would be the hardest struggle. I mean, where you couldn't even have your relationship.
And so, I just think about those. There are a lot of people. I'm really trying to figure that out because I think, especially in the gay male community,
it's like a big brother,
it's
mentorship, with adult men to older adult men to
It's hard, I think, because one, we all come by this fairly, is that there's a lot of suspect of if I'm as the 55-year-old gay male, let me mentor you, 23-year-old. There's immediate this
ancient Greek.
Yeah, what is this? What's going on here, kind of thing. And we come by that fairly because we do act like that a lot.
Our communities we've been taught that our sexuality is the cornerstone of our identity. And in many respects it is, but it doesn't have to be in every facet and element.
Well, I think that's
it's I also think that sometimes we talk about activism, and we were talking about that a little bit earlier. And one of the things I always say, and Joel loves, that really shares this a lot in a lot of his work, is, the biggest way, to be an activist or to go about change is being who you are, wherever you are, as much as possible. And with this good stuff, that, you ain't got to be out at the protest, you ain't got to be, but just be who you are, and about, hopefully it's promoting goodness and good energy. Put that out there because we need that. We see evidence every day where that isn't happening.
Be the nicer person in the room.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and that those things really do make a difference.
They do.
It really does. And you may not see it on the national level or but no, our buckets need to be filled with goodness, and in order for that to happen, we have to know how to do that.
Yay.
Well, I really want to thank you both for coming on here and spending your time with us. I was going to say afternoon, evening, day.
Still daylight.
Well, we really appreciate that, and it's just great. Our whole point is to normalize conversations and to talk about some of these things that may be a little bit harder. So you guys brought some really good perspectives over some of the topics that we covered. So really appreciate that.
It was good. You all brought it out of us too, so that was good.
I like this kind of conversation.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, same.
It was fun. Thank you all for joining us. Have a good rest of your day.